and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, the why, what and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the daily edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 27th August 2018. So let's start. This news article on page number 3 is related to the Cheetah Reintroduction project, and this will form a part of preliminary examination syllabus under the topic General Issues on Environment and Ecology and Biodiversity. Now, previously in the year 2017, a question was asked related to the translocation of lions from their natural habitat in Gujarat to Kuno Palpur Wildlife Sanctuary. So, such conservation efforts become important for us from prelims point of view, and question can be asked based on such efforts. So, that is why the Cheetah Reintroduction project becomes important for us from prelims point of view. So, under this article, we will try to understand what are the key aspects of the Cheetah Reintroduction project. Now, regarding the news article, the Madhya Pradesh Forest Department has written to the National Tiger Conservation Authority to revive the plan to reintroduce cheetah in its Nora Dehi sanctuary. And this project of reintroduction of cheetah was conceived in 2009 but has not been functional due to the lack of funds. And regarding cheetah, we should know that it was declared extinct in 1952, and that is why the project for reintroduction of cheetah was conceived in 2009 and 10. So now let us try to understand the project Cheetah from the report of the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So regarding cheetah, it is said that it once wandered across the Asian and African dryland ecosystems. So the habitat of cheetah is the dryland ecosystems. Further, it says that today, although 5,000 cheetahs still survive in isolated populations in Africa, there are less than 80 individuals surviving in the arid regions of eastern Iran. So presently it is found only in Africa and Iran. Further, regarding the presence of cheetah in India, the report says that India was once home to many cheetahs, but the last of them was killed in 1947 and it was declared as extinct in the year 1952. So the two important points that emerge are that cheetah is found in the dryland ecosystems. Presently it is found in Africa and Iran, and it was declared as extinct in India in 1952. Now, regarding the cheetah, the report says that cheetah is a member of the family Felidae, and it is the fastest land animal and specializes in running down its prey. So, it is the fastest animal on land and runs with the speed of about 30 meters per second. Further, the report says that regarding the geographical distribution of cheetah, it is only found in the arid regions of eastern Iran in Asia and in Africa. Now, regarding the need to reintroduce the cheetah in India, the report says that just as the tiger is the flagship species of the forests, the cheetah is the flagship species of grasslands, scrublands, and open forests. So, further, the report says that with the reintroduction of cheetah, these dryland ecosystems of India will have a chance to return to their natural state. So, simply the need to reintroduce the cheetah in India is because it will help in conservation of the dryland ecosystem of India. Now, regarding the location of reintroduction of cheetah, 3 regions have been identified. And these regions are important for us from prelims point of view. So first in this is the Nora Dehi in MP or Madhya Pradesh. Second is the Kuno Palpur Wildlife Sanctuary in Madhya Pradesh. And the third one is the Shahgarh landscape in Rajasthan. So as can be seen in the map, the Shahgarh is in the Jaisalmer district of Rajasthan. The second place is the Kuno Palpur in Madhya Pradesh. And the third one is Nora Dehi in Madhya Pradesh. So these 3 locations should be remembered. So the important points that emerge which are important from prelims point of view are, first, it is that the cheetah is the fastest animal on land. The second important point that emerges is that it is only found in the arid regions of eastern Iran in Asia and in parts of Africa. The third important point is that it is a flagship species of grasslands, scrublands and open forests. And by conserving this species, it will be possible for us to conserve the grassland and open forest ecosystem, or simply the dryland ecosystems. And the final and the most important point are the locations which have been identified for the reintroduction of cheetah. And these locations are the Nora Dehi in MP, Kuno Palpur in MP, and Shahgarh in Rajasthan. And regarding the question that was asked in 2017, the question reads, the proposal to translocate some of the lions from their natural habitat in Gujarat to which one of the following sites? So the correct answer in this case was Kuno Palpur Wildlife Sanctuary, and it is in MP. And we know that this wildlife sanctuary has also been identified for the reintroduction of cheetah. That is why the locations which have been identified for conservation of some of the important species are important for us from prelims point of view. With this, let us move on to the next article. This news article on page number 6 is related to the Bombay Natural History Society. And this society is going to open its regional center near the Chilka Lake. Now, this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic General Issues on Biodiversity. And previously in the year 2014, a question was asked related to this Bombay Natural History Society. So let us try to understand some of the key facts that are related to the Bombay Natural History Society. Now, this article is in news because the Bombay Natural History Society or BNHS will start operating its regional center on the campus of Wetland Research Training Center near the Chilka Lake. And the BNHS or the Bombay Natural History Society has been active in avian research in Chilka Lake. And as we know that Chilka Lake hosts nearly 1 million birds with 97 species which are migratory in nature during the winter season. So the BNHS is involved in bird research near the Chilka Lake. Now regarding the BNHS, it is a pan-India wildlife research organization and has been promoting the cause of nature conservation for past 133 years since 1883. And regarding the mission of BNHS, the mission of BNHS is the conservation of nature and primarily the conservation of biological diversity. And it participates in the conservation of biological diversity through research, education and public awareness. And regarding the vision of BNHS, it is the premier independent scientific organization with a broad-based constituency excelling in the conservation of threatened species and habitats. So it is involved in the preservation or conservation of threatened species and threatened habitats. Now regarding the question that was asked in 2014, the question reads, with reference to Bombay Natural History Society, consider the following statement. The first statement says that it is an autonomous organization under the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Now this statement is incorrect because BNHS is not under the Ministry of Environment and Forest. Secondly, it strives to conserve nature through action-based research, education and public awareness. And we have seen that it is the mission of BNHS. And thirdly, it organizes and conducts nature trails and camps for general public. Now this statement is also correct because it can be seen on the website of the BNHS that it organizes nature trails and camps. So the statements 2 and 3 are correct. And the correct answer in this case is C, 2 and 3 only. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 14 talks about the Catastrophe Bonds. So this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic Economic Development. And previously in the year 2016, a question was asked related to the IFC Messala Bonds. So let's try to understand some of the basic facts that are related to the Catastrophe Bonds. Now in this article, the author provides a solution to ease the burden of providing the relief to the victims of a catastrophe. And the author has highlighted the need of a catastrophe bond in the light of recent Kerala floods. Further, the idea of a catastrophe bond was first mooted in 90s after the Hurricane Andrew, which caused massive damages in the United States. So the author has highlighted the need of introducing the catastrophe bonds in order to ease the burden of providing relief to the victims of a catastrophe or a disaster. So now let us try to understand what is a catastrophe bond. So a catastrophe bond is a high yield debt instrument that is usually insurance linked, and it is meant to raise money in case of a catastrophe or disaster such as a hurricane or an earthquake. So the purpose of a catastrophe bond is to raise money in case of a catastrophe or disaster. Now who issues these bonds? So these bonds are provided by the insurers or the insurance companies. And these companies provide insurance to the property against natural calamities. And because these insurances are of high risk nature, these insurers or the insurance companies try to raise money through these bonds. Further about these bonds have a maturity period of less than 3 years. And if during this period a disaster occurs, then the investors lose their money. However, if no disaster occurs, the investors get returns which are usually higher than the returns on other bonds. Now, since there is a possibility of the investor losing his money in case a disaster occurs during the maturity period of the bond, these bonds are of high risk nature. However, if a disaster does not occur within this period, the investors usually get high returns. So because the chances of returns are higher, as well as the chances of losing the money is also higher, these bonds are known as high risk bonds. And from an insurer or the insurance company's point of view, if a disaster happens during the maturity period of the bond, the liability of the insurance company to pay is generally deferred. And this is provided in the terms and conditions of such bonds. And as the liability to pay is deferred, the company uses this money to provide relief to the victims of the disaster. Further, for investors, it helps them in diversifying their risks. And further, they are compensated by a higher rate of return as compared to the normal government or the corporate bonds. And these high returns are provided because these bonds are of high risk nature. Further, these instruments reduce the stress on the balance sheet of the government at the state and the center. And this is because the relief work is funded by the investment in such bonds. And the government does not have to shell out the money from its budgets. So, simply the purpose of the catastrophe bond is to raise money in case of a disaster or catastrophe like earthquake or hurricanes. And these bonds are issued by insurers or the insurance company, and these companies secure or provide insurance to the property against natural calamities. Further, these bonds have a maturity period of less than 3 years, and if a disaster occurs during this maturity period, the investors can lose their money. However, if no disaster occurs, the investors get returns which are usually higher than the returns on other bonds. Further, during a disaster, the liability of the insurance company which had initially floated the bond is generally deferred, and this money is used by the insurance company to provide relief to the victims of the disaster. Further, for investors, they usually get higher returns on their investment as compared to the investment in normal government or corporate bond. And it will also help in reducing the stress on the balance sheets of governments because they will not have to shell out money from their budgets. Now, another benefit of such bonds is that the investors keep a very keen eye towards the level of preparedness for handling the disasters or the catastrophes. So, the investors also take keen interest in the level of preparedness for handling a catastrophe or disaster. And simply, we should understand that the investors have a high risk in such investments, and due to this, they can lose their money if the disaster causes huge losses. And we know that the loss during the disasters can be reduced if the preparedness is very well. So the investors have an indirect interest in the level of preparedness for handling the catastrophes and disasters as well. And due to this, it reduces the inefficiency and augments investment in the technology and makes the people aware about how to stand against such events. So in short, it develops the interest of an investor in the level of preparedness against a disaster. And finally, the author says that it is high time that such instruments are introduced in India so that the relief and reconstruction work in areas affected by natural disaster goes on unimpeded and are not stalled for only the want of capital. So the author says that India should also introduce such catastrophe bonds, and this will help in relief and reconstruction work in case of natural disasters. Further, this will also solve the problem of financing such disasters. Now, although the catastrophe bonds have not been issued in India, but once these bonds are issued, they will become very important for us from prelims point of view because the IFC Messala Bonds were recently introduced and they become a part of the preliminary examination in the year 2016. And the question reads, with reference to the IFC Messala Bonds, sometimes seen in the news, which of the statements given below are correct? The first statement reads, the International Finance Corporation, which offers these bonds, is an arm of the World Bank. So this statement is correct. And secondly, they are the rupee dominated bonds and are source of debt financing for public and private sector. So this statement is also correct. And the correct answer in this case is both 1 and 2, that is C. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 8 is related to the Article 35A, which is related to the Jammu and Kashmir and the basic structure of the Indian Constitution as provided by the Keshwananda Bharati case. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination. Further, in the year 2013, a question was asked as to how the Supreme Court of India keeps a check on the arbitrary power of the Parliament in amending the Constitution. Further, in the year 2014, a question was asked related to the basic structure doctrine itself. So let us try to understand the point of view of the author regarding this article. Now, Article 35A has been in news because a Delhi-based non-governmental organization, We the Citizens, has filed a petition in the Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of Article 35A of the Indian Constitution. And regarding the Article 35A, it provides certain special rights for the residents of Jammu and Kashmir. And it also exempts any legislation from being annulled on the ground that they infringe the fundamental rights guaranteed by the Indian Constitution. Thus, due to the Article 35A, even if a legislation violates the fundamental rights of the Constitution, it cannot be annulled. Further, according to the petitioner, this immunity granted to the Jammu Kashmir's laws is discriminatory, and therefore Article 35 should be declared as unconstitutional. Further, the Chief Justice of India, while hearing the case on constitutionality of Article 35A, had orally observed that the Supreme Court will consider whether the Article 35A violates the basic structure of the Indian Constitution. So, the constitutionality of Article 35A has been challenged. And in an oral observation, the Supreme Court has observed that whether the Article 35A violates the basic structure of the Constitution of India. So let us try to understand what is the Article 35A about and how was it introduced in the Indian Constitution. Further, we will try to understand the grounds on which it has been challenged in the Supreme Court. Now, the Article 35A grants the status of permanent residency to the residents of Jammu and Kashmir. And this Article 35A was inserted into the Constitution as the part of amendments made through the 1954 Presidential Order, which was imposed under the Article 370. And we know that Article 370 contains special provisions with respect to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, as the Article 35A has been introduced in the Constitution by the 1954 Presidential Order under the Article 370, and it has not been introduced through an amendment under the Article 368, the petitioners have challenged the constitutionality of article on this basis. Further, the Article 35A empowers Jammu and Kashmir to define a class of persons as constituting the permanent residents of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. And this permanent status confers special rights and privileges on these people. So these are some of the key facts that are related to the Article 35A. These are that it provides the status of permanent residency to some people. Further, it was introduced in the Constitution by the 1954 Presidential Order under the Article 370, and it was not introduced through an amendment under the Article 368 of the Constitution. And further, the permanent residents are provided with special rights and privileges. Further, the Article 35A has been challenged in the Supreme Court on the following grounds. The first is that the petitioners have argued that President cannot amend the Constitution through a presidential order, as the amendment of the Constitution can be carried only through the Article 368, which confers the power to amend the Constitution on the Parliament and not on the President. Secondly, the position of Article 370 was always a temporary provision in the Constitution, and so it must be removed so as to bring the state of Jammu and Kashmir at par with other states of the Indian Union. Thirdly, the government of Jammu and Kashmir has discriminated against non-residents, as they are not allowed to buy property in the state and get government jobs or vote in the local elections. It has also been challenged on the ground that the permanent resident certificate, as guaranteed by the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, violates the Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, which is the right to equality. So these are some of the grounds on which the Article 35A has been challenged in the Supreme Court. And these grounds are that the President cannot amend the Constitution of India, and the right to amend the Constitution under the Article 368 has been conferred only on the Parliament of India. Further, the Article 370 is a temporary provision in our Constitution, and it should be removed in order to bring the state of Jammu and Kashmir at par with the other states of Indian Union. Further, the petitioners have argued that the government of Jammu and Kashmir has discriminated against non-residents, as these people are not allowed to buy property, get government jobs, or vote in the local elections. And the last ground is that the permanent resident certificate, as guaranteed by the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, violates the right to equality under Article 14 of the Indian Constitution. Now, as this article talks about the Article 35A and the basic structure, let us try to understand what are the basic aspects of basic structure. Now, the basic structure doctrine was expounded in the landmark judgment of Keshwananda Bharati versus the state of Kerala. And as per the judgment, the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be altered or amended by the Parliament or the Executive. Further, the judiciary has the power of judicial review to ascertain if a law made by the Executive violates the basic structure of the Constitution. So simply, as per the Keshwananda Bharati case, the basic structure of Constitution cannot be altered or amended by the Parliament. Further, the judiciary has the power of judicial review to ascertain if any law that has been made by the Parliament or any amendment to the Constitution violates the basic structure of the Constitution. Further, what constitutes the basic structure of the Constitution has not been clearly defined, and the basic structure is not an exclusive list, and things can be added by the judiciary in the future. However, some of the features have been defined by the judiciary in various judgments as the basic structure, and these include the supremacy of the Constitution, republican and democratic form of government, secular character of the Indian Constitution, separation of powers between the legislature, executive and judiciary, federal character of the constitution, the mandate to build a welfare state contained in the directive principles of state policy, sovereignty, unity and integrity of the nation, and essential features of individual freedoms secured to the citizens. So these are some of the aspects of the basic structure that have been defined by the judiciary during various judgments. So finally, the author concludes that the Article 370 in itself is essential to maintain India's federal structure and balance. Further, the author says that more than 6 decades have elapsed since the Article 35A was inserted. Further, the author says that the Supreme Court has held in the Vaman Rao versus Union of India case that an amendment prior to the decision in Keshwananda cannot be susceptible to a basic structure challenge. This means that in the Vaman Rao versus Union of India case, the court has said that any amendment which was made prior to the decision of Keshwananda Bharti cannot be challenged as being in violation of the basic structure doctrine. So finally, the author says that it will be interesting to see what the Supreme Court in this ongoing case ultimately decides. So basically, it is a news in transition, and let us wait for the story to unfold. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 9 talks about the review of India's policy on dams. So this forms a part of the General Studies paper 3 under the topic Disaster and Disaster Management. So let us try to understand the point of view of author that has been highlighted in this article regarding the India's dams policy. So the author says that India needs to revise its policy towards dams. And for this he says that dams today are becoming more and more dangerous for the ecology and are obsolete for their purpose. And the author has highlighted the need for reviewing the policy on dams based on the destruction caused by the Kerala floods. And we know that these floods were caused by the overflowing of the Idukki Dam. So as the author says that the dams have become outdated and have become obsolete for their purposes, he has highlighted several points in support of his argument. The author says that dams do not benefit subsistence farmers and households. So the author says that dams do not benefit subsistence farmers and households. This is because most of the irrigation provided by dams is used for growing cash crops like sugarcane. So the author says that the dams do not have much utility for subsistence or the poor farmers and the household drinking water requirements. Secondly, the author says that the social cost of building dams is very high. In this regard, the author says that building dams submerges prime forests, villages, farms, and it destroys livelihoods of thousands of people. For this, the author says that till today, almost 4.4 million people have been displaced, making it the single largest cause for displacement post-partition. Thirdly, the author says that the dams are risky and unsafe. In support of this argument, the author says that dams are far more hazardous than any other infrastructure project except the nuclear power plants. Highlighting a report, the author says that according to the India Water Portal, over 100 dams in India are a century old. And more than 500 large dams, which are 50 to 100 years old, have major defects and need urgent repair. So as many of the dams in India are very old and they have major defects, there is a need for urgent repair of such dams, and this makes them very risky and unsafe. Further, the author says that ecological disasters are growing due to dams. For this, he says that it is also accepted today that dams can trigger seismic events. And we know that seismic events are earthquake. So the author says that the reservoir-induced seismicity from the weight of the reservoir has resulted in earthquakes in various parts of the country. And in this regard, he says that of the cases of reservoir-induced seismicity reported worldwide, 17 have been reported from India. Further, the geologists doubt the seismic stability of dams. Now, reservoir-induced seismicity or RIS is simply the earthquake events which are triggered by the large volume of water in the dams. And an example of the reservoir-induced seismicity is the Koyna Dam in Maharashtra. And this earthquake was induced by the large amount of water that is stored in the Koyna Dam in Maharashtra. Further, in case of earthquakes, the dams become very unstable. For example, the Tehri Dam in Uttarakhand is always under threat due to highly seismic zone. So the author says that because the dams have lost their utility now and they are becoming dangerous due to the growing ecological disasters, so the author says that there is an urgent need to review India's stand on dams. Further, the author says that government should find other decentralized alternatives that involve water recycling and reuse. Further, he says that there is a need to critically review every dam in the country and decommission those that are in poor state. And the government should stop building new ones and establish sound safety protocols. Now, after going through this discussion, you should try and answer this question from mains point of view. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Now, let us move on to the question for the day.